There are mysteries in this world that governments, historians, and even scientists would rather you never uncover. From encrypted messages left by killers to books no one can read, from hidden treasures to codes still unsolved by the CIA, these puzzles continue to baffle us. In today's video, we're diving into some of the most chilling and unsolved ciphers, messages, and secrets that have haunted humanity for decades. Make sure you stick around until the very end, because one of these mysteries might hold a clue that still hasn't been cracked to this day. Number 10. The Zodiac Killer's Message. The mystery surrounding the identity of the Zodiac Killer is one of the most enduring cold cases in American history. The man who was later dubbed the Zodiac terrorized Northern California in the late 60s and early 70s, killing at least 5 people, and maybe as many as 37. He would often call police himself to brag about his latest murder or taunt them for not being able to catch him. The killer even wrote letters to the press, boasting about his crimes. But perhaps the most bizarre thing about the case was a coded message he included with one of those letters. On December 1969, the San Francisco Chronicle published a letter from the Zodiac along with a strange diagram. The letter contained a series of seemingly random numbers and symbols: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Then there were arrows pointing to different parts of the diagram that didn't seem to have any particular meaning. This wasn't the only time the Zodiac Killer tried his hand at cryptography. In another letter to the press, he included a different cipher, one that still hasn't been cracked. It reads 11, 13, 21, 1, 23, 1, 4, 19, 5, 23, 1, 21, 14, 8, 20, 16. If you're wondering what it could possibly mean, don't bother. Experts have thrown their hands up in the air and admitted defeat. They just can't figure it out. Number 9. The Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript is a bizarre book that seems to be written in an indecipherable language. It got its name from the Polish bookseller Wilfred Voynich, who purchased it in 1912. The book is believed to date back to the 15th century and may have been written in Italy. For the most part, it's filled with botanical illustrations along with diagrams of astronomy, cosmology, geology, and anatomy. There are also pictures of bathing women and strange, impossible-looking machines that appear to be early attempts at computers. As for the writing itself, it's called an undeciphered script. Scholars have examined the manuscript and have confirmed that it's not written in any known ancient language. What's more, the text seems to follow no conventional grammar or syntax, which rules out things like Pig Latin or a simple substitution cipher. Even cutting-edge technology has failed to shed light on the book's secrets. When scientists scanned the manuscript using a special X-ray machine, they discovered the text consists of real words, but they weren't written in any recognizable alphabet. Scientists can't even determine whether the text is meant to be read from left to right or top to bottom. So far, nobody has been able to decipher the strange writing, which is why the book has become a favorite among conspiracy theorists. Some believe it contains lost knowledge from an ancient civilization. Others think it's proof of time travel. But these are just theories. We don't really know what the book says or what it means. Number 8. The Crypto Statue. The Crypto Sculpture in Washington, D.C., is a collection of 4 encrypted messages hidden somewhere near CIA headquarters. The statue was created by American sculptor Jim Sanborn and first installed outside the agency in 1990. In 2006, it was moved to a nearby parking garage. Nobody knows where the sculpture originally stood, but we do know that its cryptic messages have only partially been deciphered. Cryptos has 4 separate sections, each containing a different cipher. The first section was solved within days of the statue being unveiled. It turns out the message simply said, "Between subtle shading and the absence of light, There are 1001 ways to die. The second message was cracked a few years later. This one took a bit longer, but it eventually translated to mirror maze. The third message proved to be even more difficult, but it was finally deciphered in 2010. The code translates to, "If you only read the newspaper, you will be misinformed." This fourth message is still unsolved. It reads Kova 13,724 Kunst to 155,131 Key GX JQ Mez, and 33K. Jim Sanborn says the uncracked code is actually fairly simple. He just wants to make sure the person who solves it is worthy. Before making the sculpture, Sanborn sent one of his friends the full message in hopes of getting some feedback. The friend looked at it for a while and then said, "I think this is interesting. It doesn't make any sense." Unsure if he should be offended, Sanborn asked his friend if he had anything else to add. "Oh yeah," he replied. "You're an idiot." Number 7. The Beale Ciphers. The Beale Ciphers are 3 encrypted messages that supposedly contain the location of a secret treasure worth $40 million. The story goes that in 1820 a man named Thomas J. Beale handed over 3 ciphers to a lawyer named John H. Skaggs and told him to keep them safe until a certain date. Beale promised to return one day and reveal how the codes worked, but he never came back. The story stayed under the radar for almost a century, only surfacing again in the 1920s. According to legend, Beale was a captain in the Revolutionary War and spent some time with the Freemasons. He decided to leave behind a fortune in gold and silver somewhere in Bedford County, Virginia. He entrusted the treasure's location to Skaggs, but it was to remain secret until after the Civil War. When the time was right, Beale would reappear and Skaggs would turn over the ciphers, but he wasn't supposed to try and decode them himself. Not until 100 years had passed. For obvious reasons, a lot of people wanted to crack the Beale ciphers, but unfortunately for treasure hunters, they were destroyed in a house fire in 1982. Not to worry though, because they were copied multiple times before the blaze. As for whether or not the treasure is real, well, that remains to be seen. Number 6. The Napoleon Cipher. Napoleon Bonaparte might go down in history as one of the greatest military leaders ever. He wasn't much of a writer, however. That's why it was so strange when a cipher attributed to the French emperor was recently uncovered. Researchers found the code hidden inside an old book about the French Revolution. It was published anonymously in 1823 and contains a secret message addressed to Napoleon. The cipher is basically a series of numbers that correspond to letters of the alphabet. The resulting message is pretty weird and reads, "A great misfortune hangs over the head of our unfortunate fatherland. From the depths of distress, your devoted children call out to you." Given the context of the book, researchers believe it was written during the Bourbon Restoration when Napoleon had been exiled to the island of Elba and the French monarchy had been restored. The cipher seemed to indicate that the author was hoping for Napoleon to return and overthrow the Bourbons. But who was the author, and how did he manage to hide his secret message for all these years? Well, that's the question researchers are hoping to answer next. Number 5. The Einstein Cipher. Albert Einstein was arguably the smartest man of the 20th century. But for all his knowledge of physics, he couldn't quite figure out this mysterious cipher. In 1955, Einstein was visiting the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey, when he noticed something strange on the floor. Tucked away in a corner was a metal box with a lock on it. The box didn't look like anything special, but the lock was incredibly complex, and Einstein just had to know how it worked. He spent weeks trying to decipher the code, but he was stumped. So he brought it to John H. Van Vleck, a professor at MIT who was also working at the Institute. Van Vleck was stumped too. Eventually, the two men gave up and removed the box's lock. Inside they found a couple of old math books. That was the end of the story. But what if someone hadn't tampered with the box? How long would it have taken to solve its cipher? The answer, according to Professor Van Vleck, is that it would have been virtually impossible without modern electronics. And that's because the lock was designed to take a ridiculously long time to crack. It would have taken an IBM 700 for a computer 2,400 hours to decipher the combination. For us regular folks, that's 100 years. Number 4. The Mahatma Letters. In 1924, the New York Times published a series of letters supposedly written by Mahatma Gandhi. The papers claimed the letters were encoded messages from the leader of Indian nationalism. They were written in a South African prison shortly before Gandhi returned to India. The problem was that the messages had been written in a cipher that made absolutely no sense. Experts tried everything they could think of, but they couldn't get to the bottom of it. One scholar came close, translating the letters to say, "Is God just, or is he unjust? Do not be afraid of sacrifice." Unfortunately, the translation didn't match up with the rest of the message. The Mahatma letters remained a mystery until 2005, when they were finally decoded by a British cryptographer named Gordon Walsh. It turned out the code was based on a series of shifts. The only thing is it used an unusual mathematical system. Instead of moving forward 3 spaces or 13 spaces, the cipher jumped around with no clear pattern. Once decoded, the message read, "All restrictions being removed. I am now free to go anywhere, do anything." Number 3. The Enigma code. Enigma was a type of cipher used by Germany during World War II. The device resembled a typewriter and could encode and decode messages by scrambling the letters of the alphabet using a series of rotors. The Enigma code was incredibly secure, and Allied forces struggled to break it for much of the war. It wasn't until 1945 that the British were finally able to crack the code, and as you might imagine, it changed everything. The British were able to use German Enigma messages to track troop movements and plan operations. They even used the code to predict the German declaration of war. Unfortunately, the Germans figured out that the Enigma code had been broken towards the end of the war, which caused them to switch to simpler encryption methods. Nevertheless, it's estimated that Enigma shortened the war by years and saved countless lives. One of the most famous Enigma machines is on display at the Imperial War Museum in London. It was recovered from the battleship Bismarck, which sank in 1941 after being damaged by the Royal Navy. Number 2. The hexagram cipher. In January 1920, the New York Times published an article titled, "Girl Solves Secret Code That Baffled Officials." The story was about a 16-year-old girl named Helen Viola, who managed to decipher a mysterious hexagram that had been hanging in the window of a local store. The hexagram was a 6-pointed star inscribed with the letters H, E, L, E, N, A, and E, B, C, F, D, A. Helen had no idea what it meant, but she was curious. She worked on it every day for 10 days, and eventually realized the letters formed 2 messages. When read vertically, the hexagram said, "Helen was here, and beware the cat." But who put it there, and why? No one knows. Some people thought it was a Jewish cabal, but there was no evidence of that. And the fact that it mentioned Helen specifically made it all the more confusing. To this day, nobody knows who put the hexagram in Helen's window, or what the heck it even means. Number 1. The railroad cipher. If you've watched our videos about the Beale ciphers or the crypto statue, you'll probably enjoy the railroad cipher. It's another unsolved mystery with a huge reward. $1 million to be exact. The cipher was supposedly left behind by the Union Army following Lincoln's assassination. It contains the locations of buried treasure belonging to Confederate President Jefferson Davis. According to the story, a member of General Lee's staff discovered the cipher, but he didn't realize it was a code. He simply wrote down the symbols and sent the list to Confederate Secretary of War, John M. Daniel. The original list contained 13 items, but 5 were destroyed in the fire that razed Richmond, Virginia. The surviving 8 ciphers are P, R, B, B, T, F, R, B, G, L, J, F, R, K. The man who put the cipher together is unknown, but he was likely a member of General Grant's staff. Grant was particularly interested in finding Davis after Lincoln's assassination. He offered a reward of $10,000 for the president's capture, dead or alive. It's believed that Grant instructed his men to bury valuables throughout the South in case Confederate soldiers tried to retaliate. He might have even planned to steal the treasure back after the war. Whatever his intentions, the money is still out there waiting to be found. Which of these mysteries intrigues you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to come back soon for more amazing videos. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. Stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching.